Sarah read James's letter 3 times before setting it down on her kitchen table with shaking hands. His words were honest and heartfelt, expressing feelings that had been growing between them over the months they had worked together. He wrote about watching Emma blossom under his guidance and seeing Sarah find her confidence again. Most importantly, he had written about wanting to offer them both something more permanent than just employment. He wanted to offer them a real family. The letter concluded with a proposal that took Sarah's breath away. James wanted to marry her, not just for love, though he made it clear that his feelings were genuine, but also to provide legal protection for Emma. As his wife, Sarah would have the security and stability that Marcus couldn't challenge in court. Emma would have a father figure who truly cared about her well-being, and they would all have the ranch as their permanent home. Sarah spent the night walking around the house, unable to sleep as she considered the implications of James's proposal. She cared for him deeply and knew that Emma adored him, but the practical nature of his offer made her question whether it was fair to either of them. She had seen what happened when marriages were based on convenience rather than genuine love, and she didn't want to trap James in an arrangement that might eventually make him resentful. The next morning, Emma noticed her mother's distracted mood immediately. "Are you okay, Mama? You look worried again." Sarah forced a smile and helped Emma get ready for school. "Just thinking about some adult stuff, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." But Emma was perceptive beyond her years. "Is Daddy trying to make us move away again?" The question struck at the heart of Sarah's fears. The custody hearing was only 2 weeks away, and Marcus's lawyer had been filing motions challenging their living arrangement. Despite the positive reports from Emma's teacher and her obvious happiness at the ranch, Marcus was arguing that Sarah's dependence on James Sullivan's charity made her an unfit guardian. After Emma left for school, Sarah found James working in the barn, checking on a mare that was expecting a foal. He looked up when she approached, his expression hopeful, but nervous. "I read your letter," Sarah said without preamble. "I need you to know how much it means to me that you would make such an offer. But I also need you to understand what you'd be taking on." James set down his tools and gave her his full attention. "I know exactly what I'd be taking on, Sarah. A woman I've come to love and a little girl who's already stolen my heart. A chance to build something real and lasting with people who matter to me." "Marcus will never stop fighting for custody," Sarah warned. "Even if we were married, he'd find new ways to challenge us. He has money and connections, and he doesn't care what damage he does to Emma as long as he wins." "Then we'll fight him together," James replied simply. "And we'll win because we actually care about what's best for Emma, not just about being right." Sarah felt tears threatening to spill over. "I don't want you to marry me just to save us from Marcus. That's not fair to you." James stepped closer and gently took her hands in his work-roughened ones. "Sarah, I'm not proposing just to save you from your ex-husband. I'm proposing because somewhere along the way, you and Emma stopped being employees and started being family. I wake up every morning looking forward to seeing Emma's smile and hearing about her latest discoveries. I go to sleep every night grateful that you're both safe and happy here. But what if the feelings change? What if you realize that taking on someone else's problems wasn't what you really wanted? What if you realize that you deserve someone who sees you and Emma as blessings instead of problems?" James countered. "Sarah, I've lived alone on this ranch for 15 years. I thought I was content with that life, but you've shown me what I was missing. I want to wake up every morning knowing that you and Emma are here to stay, not wondering when Marcus's next legal maneuver might take you away from me." That afternoon, Sarah called her sister in California to talk through the situation. Her sister listened patiently as Sarah explained James's proposal and her conflicted feelings about accepting it. "Sarah, honey, you're overthinking this," her sister said finally. "You just described a man who loves you and Emma, provides for you both, and wants to make a permanent commitment. What exactly is the problem?" "The problem is that it feels too convenient. Like I'm using him to solve my custody problems." "Are you in love with him?" Sarah considered the question honestly. Over the months at the ranch, she had come to appreciate James's kindness, his integrity, and his gentle way with Emma. She looked forward to their evening conversations and felt safe and valued in his presence. "Yes, I think I am." "And does Emma love him?" "She adores him. She calls him Mr. James, but She looks at him like he's already her father. Then, stop sabotaging your own happiness and say yes to the man's proposal, her sister said bluntly. Marcus has spent years making you feel like you don't deserve good things. Don't let him win by convincing you to turn down the best thing that's happened to you in years. That evening, Sarah asked James to walk with her around the property after Emma had gone to bed. The autumn air was crisp, and the stars were brilliant in the clear sky. They walked in comfortable silence until they reached the small pond where James's horses often came to drink. "I've been thinking about your proposal," Sarah began, her heart racing with nervousness. "And?" James asked gently. "I'm scared," Sarah admitted. "I'm scared that I'm making another mistake, that I'm being selfish, that I'm not thinking clearly because I'm desperate for security." James stopped walking and turned to face her. "Sarah, look at me. Do you think I'm the kind of man who would propose marriage if I weren't completely sure about what I wanted?" She met his steady gaze and saw the sincerity there. "No, you're not. Do you think I would risk Emma's happiness by offering her a home I wasn't committed to providing? No. Then, trust me when I say that this isn't about charity or convenience. This is about love and family and building something good together. I want to marry you because I can't imagine my life without you and Emma in it." Sarah felt the last of her resistance crumble. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, I'll marry you." James pulled her into his arms and kissed her under the starlight, and for the first time in years, Sarah felt completely safe and loved. They decided to marry quickly, before the custody hearing, to present a united front to the court. The wedding was small and simple, held in the ranch's backyard with only a few close friends and neighbors in attendance. Emma served as the flower girl, beaming with happiness as she scattered rose petals down the makeshift aisle. James had surprised Sarah with a wedding dress that fit perfectly, a simple but elegant design that made her feel beautiful and cherished. Emma wore a new dress too, in a matching shade of blue, and carried a small bouquet of wildflowers from the ranch's meadows. As they exchanged vows, Sarah felt a sense of rightness that she had never experienced before. James promised to love and protect both her and Emma, and Sarah promised to build a life of love and partnership with him. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Emma cheered loudly, and the small gathering erupted in applause. The custody hearing took place a week after the wedding, and Marcus arrived with his expensive lawyer and a folder full of arguments about why Sarah's hasty marriage proved her instability. But the judge was more interested in Emma's well-being than in Marcus's legal maneuvering. Emma's teacher testified about the dramatic improvement in her academic performance and social confidence since moving to the ranch. The school counselor spoke about Emma's positive attitude and her excited stories about learning to care for animals and helping with ranch work. Most importantly, the judge interviewed Emma privately to hear her own thoughts about her living situation. When Emma emerged from the judge's chambers, she was smiling confidently, and Sarah knew that her daughter had spoken honestly about her happiness at the ranch. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. Emma's primary custody would remain with Sarah, and Marcus's visitation would continue on the existing schedule. The judge noted that Emma was thriving in her new environment, and that any future custody modifications would need to demonstrate clear evidence that a change would benefit the child's well-being. Marcus left the courthouse angry and defeated, but Sarah felt only relief and gratitude. Emma would grow up at Double Creek Ranch, surrounded by love and stability and wide-open spaces where she could become whoever she was meant to be. That evening, the new family celebrated with a barbecue dinner on the ranch's back porch. Emma regaled them with stories from her private conversation with the judge, including her detailed explanation of how to collect chicken eggs and why Buttercup was the best horse for learning to ride. "I told the judge that Mr. James, Daddy James, teaches me important things every day," Emma said, using the new name she had chosen for her stepfather. "And I told him that Mama smiles all the time now, and that our house feels safe and happy." James reached over and ruffled Emma's hair affectionately. "You did great today, kiddo. I'm proud of you for being so brave and honest." As the sun set over the pastures, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 6 months ago, she had been desperate and frightened, unsure of how to provide for Emma or protect her from an uncertain future. Now she was part of a real family, with a husband who loved them both and a home where Emma could grow and thrive. The ranch had given them more than just employment and housing. It had given them a chance to start over and build something beautiful together. Emma was learning responsibility and confidence while caring for the animals she adored. Sarah had found work that utilized her skills and a partner who valued her contributions both professionally and personally. Most importantly, they had found love in its truest form, not the desperate attachment born of need, but the steady, reliable love that grows from mutual respect, shared values, and genuine care for each other's happiness. Years later, as Sarah watched Emma graduate from high school with plans to study veterinary medicine, she would remember that first desperate walk past the ranch and marvel at how a simple conversation over a fence had changed their entire lives. The ranch had given them everything they needed: security, purpose, love, and the space to become the family they were always meant to be. James had kept every promise he made in his wedding vows, and many that he never had to speak aloud. He had been Emma's teacher, protector, and champion, attending every school event and celebrating every achievement. He had been Sarah's partner in every sense, supporting her dreams and sharing the daily work of building their life together. And Emma had grown into a confident, capable young woman who still gathered eggs every morning and who planned to return to the ranch after college to help James expand their operation to include a veterinary clinic for large animals. The little girl who had once pressed her face to car windows to watch horses had found her calling, and she would spend her life caring for the animals she loved. The custody battles with Marcus had eventually stopped as Emma grew older, and her preferences became impossible to ignore. Marcus had remarried and started a new family, gradually losing interest in the legal fights that had once consumed him. Emma maintained a cordial but distant relationship with her biological father, but James was the man she called Dad and the one she turned to for guidance and support. Sarah had never regretted saying yes to James's proposal or trusting her heart when logic told her to be cautious. Their marriage had grown stronger with each passing year, built on the solid foundation of mutual respect, shared responsibility, and genuine affection. They had built something lasting and good together, just as James had promised they would. The ranch continued to prosper under their joint management, and they had become pillars of their small community, known for their integrity, their hard work, and their willingness to help neighbors in need. They had learned that sometimes the most important decisions in life require faith rather than certainty, and that love, when it's real and true, has the power to transform everything it touches. 3 weeks into their new life at Double Creek Ranch, Sarah had settled into a routine that felt more natural than anything she had experienced in years. She woke each morning to the sound of roosters crowing and James starting his rounds with the livestock. Emma would bounce out of bed, eager to help with whatever tasks awaited them. Sarah's days were spent managing the ranch's bookkeeping, coordinating feed deliveries, and handling correspondence with buyers and suppliers. James had been right about her aptitude for the work. Her previous experience as a bookkeeper, combined with her natural organizational skills, made her invaluable to the ranch's operations. She found satisfaction in bringing order to years of scattered receipts and inconsistent record-keeping. Emma had blossomed in ways that amazed Sarah. The quiet, anxious child who had clung to her mother's side in the courthouse was now confident and curious, spending her afternoons learning to care for the animals under James's patient guidance. She had been assigned responsibility for a small flock of chickens and took her duties seriously, collecting eggs each morning and ensuring the birds had fresh water. "Look, Mama," Emma called out one afternoon, carefully carrying a basket of eggs toward the house. "Henrietta laid 2 eggs today, and the brown one from Beatrice is huge." James followed behind her, smiling at the child's enthusiasm. "Your daughter has a real gift with animals," he told Sarah. "She's gentle but confident, and the horses seem to sense that. I think she might be ready to start learning to ride soon." The suggestion sent a flutter of worry through Sarah's chest. "Is that safe? She's still so young. I'll start her with Buttercup on a lead rope, just walking around the paddock." Buttercup's 23 years old, and gentle as a lamb. She taught my nephew to ride when he was Emma's age. Sarah watched Emma's face light up with excitement and realized she was being overprotective. The ranch was teaching Emma independence and confidence in ways that their cramped apartment never could. She nodded her agreement, and Emma threw her arms around James's waist in gratitude. That evening, as Sarah was updating the ranch's financial records on her laptop, her phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen, and her stomach immediately knotted with tension. She had been dreading this call, but knew it was inevitable. "Sarah, what the hell is going on?" Marcus's voice was sharp with anger. "I want to pick up Emma for my weekend, and your neighbors said you moved out weeks ago. Where's my daughter?" "Emma is safe and happy," Sarah replied, keeping her voice steady. "We found a better living situation. You can't just disappear with her. I have custody rights, and I'll have the police looking for you if you don't tell me where you are right now." Sarah took a deep breath, knowing she had to handle this carefully. "We moved to a ranch outside town where I found work and housing. Emma is thriving here, and you're welcome to exercise your visitation rights. But I'm not going to let you use our housing situation against us in court anymore." "A ranch? What kind of setup is this, Sarah? Are you living with some man you barely know? Because if you are, my lawyer is going to have a field day with this." The accusation stung, partly because Sarah knew how the arrangement might look to outsiders. "I have a job as the ranch administrator, and we live in employee housing. Everything is completely proper and professional." Marcus was silent for a moment, and Sarah could almost hear him calculating how to use this information to his advantage. "I want to see Emma this weekend. Give me the address." Sarah provided the ranch's address and ended the call, feeling drained. She knew Marcus would arrive with his critical eye, looking for anything he could use to paint her as an unfit mother. She would need to prepare Emma for the visit and make sure James understood the delicate situation. The next morning, Sarah explained to James that Emma's father would be coming for a visit that weekend. She tried to keep the explanation brief, but James picked up on her underlying anxiety. "Is there anything I should know about this situation?" he asked gently. "I don't want to overstep, but if there are safety concerns, I need to be aware of them." Sarah appreciated his directness. "Marcus can be difficult, and he's been trying to prove that I'm not providing a stable home for Emma. He might ask questions about our living arrangement here, trying to find something inappropriate about it." James nodded thoughtfully. "Well, there's nothing inappropriate about it, so I suppose the truth is the best approach. You're an employee with housing provided as part of your compensation package. Emma is getting excellent care and education, plus the benefits of growing up around animals and wide open spaces. Any reasonable person would see that this is good for her." "Marcus isn't always reasonable when it comes to our divorce," Sarah admitted. "He's angry and wants to win, regardless of what's actually best for Emma." Friday afternoon arrived with storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Emma had been nervous all day, sensing her mother's tension about her father's visit. When Marcus's expensive sedan pulled into the ranch driveway, Sarah watched from the kitchen window as he got out and looked around with obvious skepticism. Emma ran to greet her father, but her enthusiasm was more subdued than usual. Marcus hugged her briefly before turning his attention to the surroundings, clearly assessing everything he saw. Sarah met them outside, determined to keep things civil for Emma's sake. "Hello, Marcus. Emma's been looking forward to seeing you." "I bet she has," Marcus replied, his tone skeptical. "This is quite a place you've found. Mind if I have a look around before we go?" Before Sarah could respond, James appeared from the barn, wiping his hands on a work rag. He approached with the confident, easy manner of a man comfortable on his own property. "You must be Emma's father," James said, extending his hand. "I'm James Sullivan, owner of Double Creek Ranch. Your daughter has been a real blessing to have around here." Marcus shook his hand but remained guarded. "Marcus Martinez. I'm here to pick up Emma for our weekend visit. Sarah tells me you've given them a place to live here." "That's right. Sarah's been handling all our administrative work, and she's doing an excellent job. Emma's been learning about animal care and responsibility. It's good to see a child so eager to help out and learn new things." Emma tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, do you want to see my chickens? I take care of them all by myself, and they lay eggs for Mr. James to sell." Marcus looked down at his daughter, noting the dirt on her clothes and the confidence in her voice. "Maybe next time, sweetheart. We need to get going if we want to make it to dinner." As they walked toward Marcus's car, Sarah noticed him taking mental notes of everything he saw. The well-maintained buildings, the organized work areas, the obvious signs of a successful operation. She hoped he was also noticing how happy and healthy Emma looked. "I'll have her back by Sunday evening," Marcus said as Emma climbed into the back seat of his car. "We need to talk about this arrangement, Sarah." Soon. After they drove away, Sarah felt emotionally exhausted. James appeared beside her, offering a cup of coffee and a sympathetic look. "That seemed to go better than you expected," he observed. "For now. But Marcus doesn't give up easily. He'll find some way to use this against me. Or he'll try to convince Emma that living here isn't appropriate somehow. Emma seems pretty happy here. That has to count for something with the courts." Sarah hoped he was right, but she had learned not to underestimate Marcus's ability to manipulate situations to his advantage. Sunday evening came with Emma's return, but she was quiet and withdrawn in a way that immediately worried Sarah. After Marcus drove away, Sarah sat with her daughter on the porch swing and gently asked about the weekend. "Daddy said some things about Mr. James," Emma said quietly. "He said maybe it wasn't safe for me to live here with a stranger, and that you might be making bad choices because you're desperate." Sarah's heart ached for her daughter. Caught in the middle of adult conflicts she shouldn't have to understand. "What do you think, sweetheart? Do you feel safe here?" Emma considered the question seriously. "I feel safer here than I ever did with Daddy. Mr. James teaches me things, and never gets angry when I make mistakes. And you smile more here, Mama. You don't look scared all the time like you used to." That night, Sarah called her lawyer to discuss the potential challenges that Marcus might raise about their living situation. The lawyer was reassuring but realistic about the complications that could arise. "As long as the arrangement is professional and Emma is thriving, you should be fine," the lawyer explained. "But be prepared for Marcus to paint it as improper cohabitation or to suggest that you're prioritizing your own interests over Emma's stability. Document everything: her happiness, her progress in school, her health and development." The following week brought new challenges when Emma's school teacher called to discuss some concerning changes in Emma's behavior. Sarah's heart sank, fearing that the stress of the custody situation was affecting her daughter academically. "Actually, Mrs. Martinez, I'm calling with good news," the teacher clarified. "Emma's confidence has improved dramatically over the past month. She's participating more in class discussions, her homework is consistently complete, and she seems much more settled and happy. I wanted to compliment you on whatever positive changes you've made in her environment." Sarah felt a rush of relief and gratitude. Emma was indeed thriving at the ranch, despite the ongoing custody complications. That evening, she shared the teacher's feedback with James, who smiled with genuine pleasure at the news. "She's a special kid," James said. "And you're doing a great job with her, Sarah. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." As autumn deepened, Sarah began to see their life at the ranch as more than just a temporary solution to their housing crisis. Emma had formed genuine bonds with the animals and with James himself, who had become a steady, positive presence in her life. The work was satisfying, the environment was healthy, and for the first time since her marriage had fallen apart, Sarah felt like she was building something lasting and good. But she also knew that Marcus wasn't finished with his legal maneuvering. The next custody hearing was scheduled for November, and she would need to be prepared to defend their new life against whatever challenges he might raise. The stakes felt higher now because she had more to lose, not just a job and a place to live, but a chance for Emma to grow up in an environment where she could truly flourish. Late one evening, as Sarah was finishing up the ranch's monthly financial reports, James knocked softly on her door. When she answered, he was holding an envelope with her name written on it in careful handwriting. "I wanted to give you this before I lose my nerve," he said, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "It's probably too soon, and you might think I'm overstepping, but I needed you to know how I feel about having you and Emma here." Sarah opened the envelope with trembling fingers, unsure of what to expect. Inside was a letter written in James's neat script, expressing his growing feelings for both her and Emma, and his hope that their arrangement might become something more permanent and personal than just employer and employee. Sarah Martinez clutched her daughter's hand tighter as they walked through the crowded courthouse hallway. 8-year-old Emma looked up at her mother with worried eyes, sensing the tension that had been building for weeks. The custody hearing had not gone as Sarah had hoped, and now she faced an impossible choice that would change both their lives forever. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as they made their way past other families dealing with their own legal battles. Sarah's ex-husband, Marcus, had won partial custody despite his history of neglect and financial irresponsibility. The judge had been swayed by Marcus's new job and the expensive lawyer his wealthy parents had hired. Sarah knew in her heart that Emma would not be safe or happy splitting time between two homes, especially when one of those homes belonged to a man who had shown little interest in fatherhood until the divorce proceedings began. Outside the courthouse, the Texas sun beat down mercilessly on the concrete steps. Sarah sat on a bench and pulled out her phone to call her sister, but stopped when she saw the voicemail notification. Her landlord had called again about the overdue rent. The legal fees had drained her savings account, and her part-time job at the local diner barely covered their basic expenses. The apartment they called home was scheduled for eviction proceedings next week. Emma tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mama, are we going to be okay?" Sarah forced a smile and smoothed her daughter's dark hair. "Of course, sweetheart. We always figure things out, don't we?" But privately, Sarah was terrified. She had no family nearby who could help, and her friends were all struggling with their own problems. The thought of Emma bouncing between foster homes, or, worse, ending up primarily with Marcus, made her stomach turn. She needed a miracle, and she needed it fast. The drive home took them past rolling hills dotted with cattle and horses. Emma pressed her nose against the window, watching a group of horses grazing near a fence. "Look, Mama, they're so pretty." Sarah glanced at the ranch they were passing and noticed a sign by the gate, "Double Creek Ranch, James Sullivan, owner." She had driven this route dozens of times, but had never paid much attention to the property. Today, however, something made her slow down and really look at the sprawling ranch house, the well-maintained barns, and the peaceful pastures stretching into the distance. Back at their cramped apartment, Sarah helped Emma with her homework while trying to ignore the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter. The electricity would be shut off next week if she couldn't come up with $200, and the grocery money was already stretched thin. Emma's school supplies were running low, and her shoes had holes that Sarah had been trying to patch with duct tape. That evening, after Emma had fallen asleep, Sarah sat at her laptop researching options. The internet was full of advice about single parenting, but none of it addressed her specific situation. She needed stability for Emma, but she also needed to stay one step ahead of Marcus's legal maneuvers. His lawyer had already filed motions to increase his custody time, claiming that Sarah's financial instability made her an unfit mother. The next morning brought another crisis. Emma woke up with a fever and couldn't go to school. Sarah called in sick to work, knowing she couldn't afford to lose the wages but unable to leave her daughter alone. They spent the day on the couch watching cartoons, but Sarah's mind was racing with worry about their future. During Emma's afternoon nap, Sarah decided to take a walk to clear her head. She found herself walking toward the main road, past the ranch she had noticed the day before. This time, she saw a man in his 40s working near the fence, repairing a gate that seemed to have been damaged by a recent storm. He was tall and lean, with weathered hands that spoke of years of hard work. His brown hair was streaked with early gray, and he moved with the confident efficiency of someone who had been working with his hands his entire life. The man noticed her walking by and tipped his hat politely. "Afternoon, ma'am. Beautiful day for a walk." Sarah smiled back, surprised by his friendliness. Most people in town knew about her divorce and the gossip that surrounded it. "It is indeed. I'm Sarah Martinez, my daughter, and I live in the apartments about a mile down the road." "James Sullivan," he replied, extending his hand over the fence. "This is my place. I think I've seen your little girl with her face pressed to the car window, watching the horses." "That would be Emma. She loves animals, but we've never really had the space or money for pets." James nodded thoughtfully. "Ranching's a good life for kids. Teaches them responsibility, gives them room to run around and be children. Of course, it's a lot of work too." As they talked, Sarah learned that James had been running Double Creek Ranch for 15 years, ever since his father passed away and left him the property. He raised cattle and horses and also took in rescue animals when he could. He had never married, dedicating most of his time to building the ranch into a successful operation. You know, James said, pausing in his fence repair, I could use some help around here. The ranch hands are good with the livestock, but I need someone to help with the books, coordinate feed deliveries, that sort of thing. It's not glamorous work, but it pays decent and comes with housing if needed. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Housing. There's a small house on the property that my foreman used to live in. He moved closer to town last year to be near his grandkids. It's got 2 bedrooms, a nice kitchen, and a view of the south pasture. Needs some fixing up, but it's solid. The offer seemed too good to be true, but Sarah tried not to let her desperation show. What kind of schedule would the job require? Flexible hours, mostly. I'm up early to tend the animals, but the office work can be done whenever it's convenient. And if you had a sick child or needed to handle personal business, well, that's the benefit of working for yourself. Sarah felt tears threatening to spill over. This stranger was offering her exactly what she needed: a job, a home, and a safe place for Emma to grow up. But she had learned to be cautious about offers that seemed too generous. I should mention, she said carefully, I'm going through a difficult divorce. There might be legal complications, people coming around asking questions. James straightened up and looked her directly in the eyes. Ma'am, I've lived in this county my whole life. I know how gossip spreads and how some folks like to judge others without knowing the full story. What I care about is whether you're honest, whether you work hard, and whether you'll treat my property and animals with respect. Everything else is your business. That evening, Sarah lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about James Sullivan's unexpected offer. Emma slept peacefully beside her, occasionally murmuring in her dreams about horses and wide open spaces. Sarah knew that accepting the job would mean a complete change in their lives, but it might also mean the security and stability that Emma desperately needed. The next day, Sarah called the ranch and arranged to see the house James had mentioned. Emma came along, practically bouncing with excitement at the prospect of living near so many animals. The house was small but charming, with large windows that let in plenty of natural light and a covered porch that overlooked the pastures. Mama, could I really live here? Emma whispered, as if speaking too loudly might break the spell. We're just looking, sweetheart, Sarah replied. But even she could feel the appeal of the peaceful surroundings. The house felt like a real home, not just a place to sleep and store their belongings. James showed them around the property, explaining his daily routines and the responsibilities that would come with the job. He was patient with Emma's endless questions about the animals and even let her pet a gentle mare named Buttercup who had wandered over to the fence. As they walked back toward the main house, James turned to Sarah with a serious expression. I want to be upfront about something. I know you're in a tough spot, and I know you probably don't have a lot of options right now. This isn't charity, though. I really do need help with the administrative side of the ranch, and I think you'd be good at it. But I also believe that sometimes people need a chance to start over, especially when they have children depending on them. Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. Why would you do this for strangers? Because I remember what it was like to be young and scared and not sure where the next meal was coming from. James replied quietly. My father took a chance on me when I was 18 and had nowhere else to go. He gave me work and a place to live, and eventually he gave me this ranch. Maybe it's time I passed that kindness along. That night, Sarah made her decision. She called James and accepted the job offer, with the understanding that she and Emma would move into the small house at the end of the week. The eviction notice had been posted on her apartment door that afternoon, making the choice even easier. As she packed their few belongings, Sarah felt a mixture of hope and anxiety. She was placing her trust and Emma's future in the hands of a man she barely knew. But something about James Sullivan felt different from the other men who had disappointed her. He seemed genuine in his offer of help, and the ranch felt like the kind of place where Emma could thrive. Emma helped by carefully wrapping her few toys and books in newspaper. Mama, do you think Mr. James will let me help with the horses? I think Mr. James will have lots of jobs for a helpful girl like you, Sarah replied, smiling at her daughter's enthusiasm. The morning of the move, James arrived with a pickup truck and two of his ranch hands to help load their belongings. Sarah was embarrassed by how little they owned, but James and his workers treated every box and bag as if it contained precious cargo. Emma rode in the truck cab with James, chattering excitedly about all the animals she was going to meet. The small house looked even more welcoming with their furniture arranged inside. Sarah's grandmother's quilt looked perfect on Emma's new bed, and the kitchen table fit nicely under the window that looked out toward the horse paddock. For the first time in months, Sarah felt like they might actually be okay. That evening, James knocked on their door with a welcome gift, a basket of fresh eggs from his chickens, and a loaf of homemade bread from his neighbor down the road. Emma immediately asked if she could see the chickens, and James spent an hour showing her around the barnyard, explaining how to collect eggs and feed the various animals. As Sarah watched her daughter laugh and run around the ranch, she realized that this move might be exactly what both of them needed. Emma had color in her cheeks for the first time in weeks, and her constant worry about money and custody battles seemed to fade into the background. But Sarah also knew that their problems hadn't disappeared overnight. Marcus would find out about their move eventually, and he would probably use it against her in court somehow. She would need to prove that this new arrangement was in Emma's best interests, and she would need to make sure that she could handle the job responsibilities that James was trusting her with. Late that night, after Emma had fallen asleep in her new bedroom, Sarah sat on the front porch and looked out at the stars. The silence was different here, not the oppressive quiet of worry and fear, but the peaceful calm of a place where she and Emma could finally breathe. For the first time in a long time, Sarah allowed herself to hope that everything might actually work out.